Okay. So Award Solutions as a company, one of the best companies to work as far as the Texas is concerned, and we are proud to say that we are already training partners in Mobile World Congress for almost close to 8 years till now, and as trusted by 255 plus companies across the globe, we have global presence, and we provide training to across the complete wireless ecosystem, whether it is could be application providers, service providers, tool vendors, network vendors, or chipset vendors. I'm sure you belong to any one of these profiles or any one of these domains. It could be service provider, application provider, or tool vendors, whatever, right? So that's where we have the presence across the telecom world. And I'm very proud to say that. So like you, around 98% of the participants, whether it is a complimentary webinar or trainings, whatever they attended, they told to their colleagues, their managers, their friends. So thanks a lot for that in advance. And what we kind of trainings we provide is on demand. Typically we do that. And if somebody is coming from typically on the RAN side, so we talk about KPI impacting how to make our network much better as far as the KPIs are concerned. So we provide you take your logs and we try to provide you the training on that. And our trainings are very, very focused on a specific role-based, role-relevant trainings, what we provide basically. And of course, so far we provided around 101,000 plus trainings in LTE, and of course, close to 18,000 in 5G, and of course, 25,000 plus in the cloud and virtualization kind of domains. And today we are talking about automation. So automation typically can be done with the network, and also we also provide automation with the data what is typically available with you. So we take your data, we try to see what is there. So we talk about insights into the data. We can provide the trainings on the creating dashboards typically, and also understand what is happening in the network typically. So that's what typically we try to do that. And this is what, again, we are going to talk a little bit later. So all repeated tasks can be automated. So that is the basic order of the day as far as the telecom world is concerned at this point of time. So the today's topic a little bit talks on that as well. So virtualization, automation, these are all the different kinds of trainings, award solutions would provide. But I want to take your attention to the way how we provide you the training, right? So one is self-paced, that could be your e-learnings, and expert-led, the way you are attending, and of course blended learning. So you attend some trainings maybe once in a week, and the course would run for 3 to 4 weeks, depends upon the length of the course. And we will be given the training material, videos, white papers, etc. And every time when we meet, we typically try to answer your questions, and we try to do lots of hands-on. So that is the kind of new methodology we are providing, and it is really very, very popular at this point of time. And as far as the training courses are concerned, yes, obviously we have the RAN trainings, area interface, or RF planning and design, if somebody is sitting from the RF side. And of course, SA and NSA is coming up. So NSA, most of you already know. And we also have SA as well, standalone programs as well with that. And of course, we have, which is relevant with respect to automation. We talk about containers, orchestration, etc. And of course, voice or 5G, like the voice or LTE was very, very popular. So we also have something called the voice or 5G at this point of time. And for today's discussion, we'll be on the top two rows, network architecture, 5G RAN architecture, and of course, we have machine learning and as well as the analytics kind of domains. So this is what, again, I prefer I request you to go through the website as well. So we have data automation workshops and also manipulation workshop. That is very, very important. That's where your automation comes into the picture. And automation is not only for writing Python scripts, but also you want to see and show to the higher management, say how to visualize the data typically. That is also one part of the automation. And we also have a detailed workshops on that. And if somebody is really interested to develop some kind of models, so we have deep learning, machine learning, and artificial intelligence programs as well. And if somebody is coming from say network domain, so okay, I have to have a lot of servers, can I automate? That's where your Ansible comes into the picture. And all these programs can be instructor led or it could be blended learning. So it depends upon your company requirements. We are happy to provide the way you want the trainings. So it's a really happy day today. So you can use this QR code, and the code is webinar. Please do visit our website so that you will get up to our 26th November. So you are going to get 20% off on your all tech primers. So tech primers basically the way I'm teaching. So it will be 4 hours. That is half a day. It's virtual the way we are doing today. So the code is very simple. You can use QR code or you can use webinar. As at the time of checking out, you are sure of getting 20% off on that. So thanks in advance. I'm sure somebody would do this, and we are going to get business for us. So thanks in advance for that. And in brief about me, so my name is Eshwar. In short, typical South Indian name is large, but you can just say Eshwar. And only in telecom domain, I spent 20 plus years. And my most of the focus past 20 years is 2G to 5G in the RAN domain, a bit of core network as well. Sorry for that. And at this point of time, my focus is on 5G RAN and automation as of today, right? So that's how I am here at this point of time. And I sincerely request and also encourage you to take this QR code and be in touch with our solutions LinkedIn, and also maybe my LinkedIn, my profile also in the LinkedIn profile. So again, thanks in advance for being in touch with us to get all the updates from the award solutions to you through LinkedIn. Thanks a lot. Okay, so whoever joined a bit late, gentlemen, so my name is Eshwar. So we are going to talk about the automation use cases specific to the telecom world. So that is the topic of the day, and we are going further with the actual technical discussion now. So now, prior to that automation use cases, so let us try to understand what automation is. So basically, whenever you talk about automation, so is it really new for you at this point of time? The answer is no. We have done the automation in multiple different domains at different levels of different spectrum of our day-to-day life. But the idea is whenever you talk about an enterprise, whenever you talk about a business, the idea is how to improve the productivity, right? So the one simple answer, if you ask anybody, is okay. How about automating the process, whatever we do, whatever the job we are doing, right? So if you really can automate it, right, where a hardware or software or any machine can take care of that, so then with that particular time we could do something else. So that is a basic idea. So the idea is to improve the productivity. So the basic idea of implementing automation is to improve the productivity, right? That's great. So then when I implement the productivity, what do you mean by that? There are two words we emphasize here. One is eliminate the errors, basically, not eliminate the human resources. So don't be in that particular thought process. And also the idea is how can you improve the productivity basically to any repetitive task. So if you go and see the day to life, whatever you do in the particular business in the telecom world, so we have a lot of repetitive task is being done manually. That is the basic idea. So now how about automate this repetitive task so that you can do something else in a better way. Maybe you can do something R&D on of your own product, of your own company, or spend better time with your family. So whatever you look at it. But the idea is how can I increase my productivity by basically optimizing the repetitive task. The word repetitive task is very, very important. And also to do what? Eliminate any kind of errors, right? So that is what we try to do. It is not actually eliminating the human resources, but it may eliminate certain repetitive task resources, but of course you would get a job into the automation domain. That is basic idea of any enterprise or any business typically we do, right? So we don't want to do any repeated tasks. So now what happens is when you are not doing any repeated tasks, so the idea is to reduce the cost. So obviously every business try to do what? Implement, I mean, spend less money, get a better profit, right? So that's what we try to do. So having said that, and increase agility, so whatever the repetitive task we are trying to do, we try to do much faster, right? So that is where your the agility, software agility would come into the picture. Then obviously when I all going to do all these things, so the idea is, oh, okay, my customer is happy or not. So finally, my customer satisfaction is going to be very, very important. And somebody is coming from the typical telecom world, we typically say quality of experience, right? So quality of experience is boiled down to the customer satisfaction or the customer experience of a particular application you typically try to provide to the subscriber or user, right? And finally, what? Obviously, you reduce the cost, so you try to increase the revenues. So having with this definition, so the idea is to increase the productivity in end-to-end telecom network. So that is the basic idea. So now when I say end-to-end telecom network, what you can typically think of, right? So you can think of three different domains. One is too much of hard coding, like programming. That is one part of it. Second thing is most of the repetitive task which comes into the picture is where you are interacting with a customer typically. So that is one basic domain, right? So another the domain is, oh, okay, today I have to update say 1,000 servers in my network by tomorrow or maybe within say 48 hours. So can I typically do the automation? So there are basically three different domains at a broad category level. What we are going to talk in this particular 1 hour seminar, I will take you to that. So with that introduction, so this is a typical award proprietary of defining any terminology in the telecom world within 9 words, right? So that what we say define in 9. So this is our own proprietary of defining. So what is the definition? If you try to define it is, so we have a lot of tools basically, right? To bring efficiency through zero touch process, right? At least theoretically. Of course, we try to do optimize the I mean automation. That is the second level. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So bring efficiency. Again, we just know we talked about what is efficiency, what is in the previous slide quickly, what is the productivity, etc. We talked about it. So now we have to bring better efficiently deploying the network, our day-to-day job of doing it with zero touch processes here. But here it's that's having defined with this definition. We'll get on to the another very, very important domain. I think let me change the color of the pen. Uh, okay, let me take red for you. Okay, fine. So now, having said that, okay, sorry about that. Okay, fine. So now what we are trying to do is, so we defined automation in general. So now let us see how automation can be used by the service providers. Now, gentlemen, I would like to take your attention here to cellular or, cellular service providers at this point of time. And very soon, this service provider's name would changing to data service providers or digital service providers. That's what industry is looking at. So instead of CSP, right? So we are going to talk about DSP very soon, right? It is not digital signal processing because I know you are coming from the engineering background, but this is going to be the, I'm going to provide the digital services. Everything is going to be digitized. Gentlemen, at the same time, I just populated the poll. Please go through that. So anytime, just it would take maybe a minute or so. Please fill in that requirement. So we are happy to help you into that. So thanks for your feedback on that and filling those poll. Thank you very much. So let us come back to the system now. So we are talking about service providers, right? So what service providers can actually do automation, I already told you, right? So there are three broad areas we are covering in this particular example. One is configuration. So now the moment you say configuration, I'm sure so all of you are going to think, oh, what is this? What actually I can do configuration typical? How can you do that, right? So I'm sure day to day you are having maybe multiple servers in your network, not one or two servers. It is maybe multiple servers, and every server has a different kind of functionality to do that. Maybe 100,000 server, I mean, maybe 500 servers, maybe say 100 routers, whatever, right? So we would like to do the complete configuration automation can be done. That is one of the basic idea of the service providers. Then obviously how to reduce the problems, or you make sure that the problem will not repeat again and again. So automate remediation of the problems. And this is another last one, particularly who is coming from the radio access network. So how can you manage my capacity adjustments? Because today the networks, what we call as the scale up and scale down based on the requirement. So today I have a lot of requirement, then I have to scale up, and tomorrow I don't have any requirement, I have to scale down. So in that case, the capacity adjustments will become a very, very important the order of the day as far as the service providers are concerned, particularly cellular service providers or mobile service providers, right? So these are the three broad levels we are discussing in this particular class. Then what we talk about, what is that required if I want to do? We define the automation, we define where we can implement automation, then that is fine. But try to understand what is that you required, right? So what we need is for automation, we need skills. Definitely skills, right? So what is automation skills quickly? So you should able to write some scripting, we should able to write some Python programming, we should able to do something with respect to Ansible. We see that little bit later, but you should have that skills to automate your network, maybe at a very low level, at a maybe larger level, doesn't matter. But basically we have to do have that particular skill. Then we need to have a lot of tools, right? So we'll see in the next slide what are the different tools we are going to use in the market. And what I want your focus is this. This is very, very important word, the process, business process. So if somebody is already sitting there, probably, particularly in the Europe, we have something called your ITIL, right? So information technology, information library. So ITIL basically talks about the process. So if you look at any company, even today in the telecom world, so every company, every employee should know what is ITIL, and they should know the process, and they are expected to follow the process, right? So having said that, so what is that required for automation is basically we need to have certain skills, we should have certain tools, it could be software tools obviously, and within the guidelines of ITL, whoever depends upon your market and the company who are working in this particular domain. So obviously we have to follow the ITL norms. So ITL norms is basically you have to follow certain processes. Now why we talk about process, the moment you say process oriented company, we say, right, or the enterprise. So can I automate the process? Answer is yes. The question, the answer is what we are showing in the slide. That's where we actually talk about. Now, when you say automation optimization, so there are two ways to look at it. One is you automate the present processes to optimize the services whatever you provide. That is one way of it. But after maybe a year or two or three, even you can optimize even the automation. So that is a bit higher level, but that is bound to happen. So I want to, you also should remember that. So when we do automate, what is that actually required to do that? So we say we have to automate certain actions on data, right, to get certain insights. This is where your machine learning, this is where your artificial intelligence typically comes into the picture, right? And what is that you would like to automate? You don't like to automate something which is being done once in a year, definitely not. Once in a day, definitely not. So anything which is repetitive task, right? So that's where we are going to do automation, right? So this is what very, very interesting at this point of time. So I can't tell you the company name, but I was interacting with one of the major telecom giant in the world, and it's very interesting. I came to know that so they are going to reduce the manpower almost 80% by automating it. Okay, so this is just for your information, but I'm sure this is not only the company which I'm interacted, but most probably all the companies in the world, they would be doing the same way. It could be IT company, it could be telecom company, it could be anybody else. That's fine. So, but I want your focus is to what? Just think what is that repetition you try to do. Maybe you have to take the logs every day in the night, maybe probably, or you have to take the logs and try to put some graphs so that you want to show it to your manager in the next day morning. That is what every day you need to do, probably, right? You have to update the database every day in the night, for example. Particularly in the banking sector, we do the same thing, right? Every day, at the end of say 24 hours, we have to update what's happening, and that has to be projected as a dashboard in the next day, right? So just think of anything which you could think of, or any repeated task, then obviously, oh, you can do that, what is called the robotic process automation. So robot, you know, right? Robot is basically not a human being, but they try to do whatever human being try to do is nothing but can be done by a machine and nothing but a robot. That is what we call a robotic process automation. So here I want again your attention to the word process. Anything a process is, most of the process would be repetitive in the nature in our the business world. So whenever you say a repetitive task, the question is, oh, can I automate it? Answer is probably yes. That's where your RPA comes into the picture. So now, what is the RPA? How to define it? So it's very easy to define a repetitive task through scripting or other techniques, whatever, and through what? To reduce or eliminate. Remember this, words is important. 99% we don't eliminate. We definitely try to reduce. But what is the percentage of reduction? That depends upon various factors and the strategy of the company, things like that. But they eliminate the humans to perform these functions, right? So whenever you talk about say you take telecom, for example, how to generate a bill. So why would somebody shoot down and take a print out of that? So that's a kind of art, can be automation, can be done, right? So that's what typically we try to do, or we are more or less we are trying to do at this point of time. And probably you already seen that every day first of a month, probably you instruct the bank saying that, okay, you pay my rent, okay, X money every day, first of the month. So like that, you also can think of what is the repetitive task can be done in the day-to-day telecom world. So one of the interesting applications would be a set of applications which I took for an example is this. So what we call as robotic process automation use cases, one could be network management, next is data transformation. So as I told you, right? And just now I was also giving an example of billing and invoice. So every month I have to generate your bill and I have to send it a email. So I don't need to do any person to do, sit down and generate a bill and okay, send it to the email. So that days are already gone. But what is very interesting is this, right? First call resolution and customer management. So these two are very, very, very popular in the telecom world. Say the moment first time we call. So suppose I call the telecom operator for what? It is a very generic set of questions, right? So my I'm not able to get the coverage, my data rate is very low, or my bill have not been received. So it is a kind of standard questions, and it is a repetitive task. I will not ask something very, very unusual question, right? So it's all standard set of questions would be asked. So for that, so what you can do is I'm going to talk about chatbot. I'm just introducing here. We don't talk in this class, but yeah, this is what typically you can do at the back end. So customer management. And very interesting thing is what is the onboarding a customer. Suppose I'm a customer to a particular operator, so there is a huge process. They need my credentials, my need photo ID, etc., etc. It all can be process is can be automated, and that what typically required. Onboarding a customer is automation typically. And sorry, and of course by doing all these things, so increase your revenue per user, so RPU can be increased. And finally what? Scalability, anyway it will be increased. So the idea is expenses can be controlled, so unnecessarily I will not spend. But the question is, why should I automate? Why I have to repeat a task? So in general, human beings, whenever they do repetitive tasks, there is a probability, high probability of making mistakes or errors. Now the question is, how can I minimize it? So then this or RPA would come into the picture. So in general, any repetitive task, general what happens is the human being, sorry, bound to do mistakes. So can I cut those mistakes or minimize those mistakes? The answer is yes. That's where the RPA typically comes into the picture. Now, the RPAs can be very, very sophisticated or very, very minimal sophisticated as far as the software is concerned. That what we say hacks and macros, and it could be programmable bots, just as I talked about, and self-learning tools, and also, and finally, cognitive automation tools. It's very, very advanced RPA tools, but if you get on to say, for example, uh, some of the industries, right? So typically they are using even your cognitive automation tools, but it will be a bit expensive. But the idea is, what is the level of automation you can do? You can do very minimal automation, you can do the maximum possible automation for your repetitive task. Everything is possible there. So now I just took a comparison. So multiple vendors, you can get into the same website. Anyway, this will be shared with you all, so don't worry about it. So there is a company called Blue Prism. UiPath is very, very famous in the market at this point of time, and also Workforce, right? So as far as the process pricing is concerned, it depends upon the bot, what is the capability of the bot, or how many bots you are going to actually going to take it up. And drag and drop programmability is available. Most of the cases it will be, and of course geo coverage is global, so in general, right? So anyway, so that's just, I thought you should have what are the different tools available in the market at this point of time. So now another interesting thing is with respect to the Python. So the Python is one of the most widely used programming languages at this point of time across the globe, right? And so, okay, so it's a programming language, that's fine. So it's a open source, most of you know about it, right? And why Python? I'm going to talk with the next 3 to 4 slides. If somebody's already worked, I don't know how many worked already in the Python or automation domain, but whoever worked, they already know that. So Python is definitely powerful at this point of time for obvious reasons, right? So if I don't know, if somebody worked with 2.x and 3.x, so then there are a lot of new libraries or modules have been introduced or increased with 3.x. And quick comparison or market survey is this. So still Python is around 44% will be used, right? Apart from JavaScript, HTML, and SQL, but depends upon what kind of use case you are using it. I think some of you may be sitting, say, okay, fine, every day in the night I have to talk to my SQL database and get some queries done, and I have to generate a report. That is nothing but an automation. You could do that with the coding can be done with the Python, and you can interact with using Python with your SQL database and update the database and get the data, write some small code, whatever the way you want. And you can also use the graphics into that, or you can use Power BI, for example, which already there one of the questions there in the poll. So I can use Power BI and make it very beautiful graphs to your manager in the next day morning, right? So that's why the Python will be very, very much useful. And there is a very interesting question: is a Python is interpreter or a compiler? So it has both capabilities, right? So, and of course, we have the integrated development and learning environment with both shell windows or normal editor window can be done. And quickly, I don't want to spend much time, but quickly, so you can have a program, create a program in that. So the editor of your, it could be nowadays all the editors, most of the editors will work with multiple languages, C, Python, Java, whatever, and convert into .py file and configure into that. So you can see for your benefit, so there is a compiler path and also interpreter path. Interpreter path is very much simpler. So we have cell by cell if somebody already know Python. And I wrote the complete, maybe say 1,000 line program, and just I compile and I'll give the output at finally, and I can create a executable image file. and how to run it. So you have multiple methodologies. You can run from the command prompt, you can run from your the IDE environment, right? So, and at the same time, what is interesting in Python is you can do the dynamic linking. So it's not that it can't be done with other languages, but this is much simpler and easier and faster to do with Python at this point of time. And of course, image will be in the RAM, and you do your kernel process, and it'll be in touch with CPU, and it will get executed to do your the final job for you, basically. And what is interesting and what is important is there are a lot of standard libraries. So you name it, you have it. So that is the advantage of the Python, right? So very extensive, lots of functionalities, right? You name it, it's really very big. But at the same time, somebody is coming from other programming background, they might get a doubt. Is it typically written in Python itself? Answer is yes, but some of the modules already written in C, so that you can just import that particular package or module and take the help of it, right? So some of you know with C, C++, right? So there is an advantage of writing in C, C++, particularly IO device manipulation. But apart from that, so memory management and other kind of particularly machine learning kind of coding, if you want, I think Python is much better at this point of time, right? I mean, you can see here huge collection of components, maybe say individual programs, modules, packages, application development frameworks, etc. So it's the list goes on basically, right? But what I want to let you know is it's very interesting at this point of time, saying that there are a lot of standard libraries or imports can be done in the Python. So you would have seen that. So the future kids at the age of 6 or 7, there are people are directly writing code in Python. Probably you would have spent a lot of 20 years in C. Now you try to learn Python, then you find it's a little bit different. But the present kids, they are already developing a lot of codes and a lot of websites already available, maybe at the age of 7, 8, 9, at that young age. So they are able to write a code in Python. That means so simple. So just you import everything, but try to understand the functionality of a particular module or a package, and just import a couple of libraries and just write and make sure that it work. Right, particularly that's how most of the programming is done with robots. For robotics, the people are using even Python, or machine learning, for example, or artificial intelligence, for example. Anyway, the idea is, so you have exhaustive list of programs, modules available for the Python, which you can just include them. And I just I put some of the main functions and the modules here, for example, random number. So whoever is interested in, say, mathematics, typically, so I use this random function a lot. I try to generate the numbers randomly and try to plot it and try to figure it out how the system works typically. And runtime, you use a lot of system and also use your operating system interaction. So if you want to create a directory where you want to go, you can go to a particular directory, create a directory, you put all the files, you look for extension, only those extensions you can use for Excel files. And similarly, you have your CSV manipulations, you can do a lot. You can do a lot with your XML manipulation. Now, the gentleman, why I put this? There are so many other things I did not pick up here. The idea is very simple. So the idea is whatever you do day-to-day functionality in your office. So what do you do basically? You try to create a directory by a program. So you might get a doubt. Oh, I have a Python code. Can I create my own directory, which is given by the user, and do some manipulations and get out of it and create a dashboard out of it? Answer is yes, right? So that is the reason. So try to interact with the system files, try to interact with the OS, and what is the kind of files you day to day you work with? Mostly with your JSON files, maybe, or you do your web scraping. So with your, I have a HTTP request, I have a server remotely in maybe in another country. I have to get onto that, connect with SSH path, and try to, I mean, get the data into my local machine. That is one methodology, or basically run a code of Python code into the remote machine and get only the output. So all these things generally you do it, right? So for all those things, you also have something called your SQLite, basically if you want to interact with your SQL database typically. And I'm sure most of the time you would be working with XML and CSV file and zipping it, and of course a little bit of math functions. And Unicode also is going to be a popular methodology today, because you try to work with multiple languages because your company is a global company. So you try to make sure that it is Unicode 8 or 16 or any specific language, whatever you would like to manage with it. And similarly, I'm sure most of you working with your system logs. So we have logging is the module which you typically get onto the system logs and try to manage your log files, right? So quickly what I've done is, so these are all the different files. So if you observe here, so how to manage, how to automate your config file is here. How to look at your VoLTE PCAP, all of you know with your PCAP log file, I can get to know that how many IP requests or UDP requests or TCP requests is coming up, how many failed, how many successful, how much time it has taken. So these are all the day-to-day functionality what we do. So I just picked up because these are all our own code. And whenever you take another course, maybe we go through this. Maybe parsing your XML file, for example, and try to get onto my SQL database, for example, right? So these are all the different methodologies or day-to-day way which you work, we picked up in the telecom world. Now I'll give just a pause over here. So are these, okay, there is a question from, okay, are these automation PyScripts open sourced? Yeah. So most of them are open source, but there are some very few will be proprietary, but most of them are open source. But whatever the examples what I'm showing is the code which is written by award company and we provide to the our customers. I think I answered your question, Nirle. Okay. Okay, okay, fine. So now I want your attention here. So I'm basically focusing on three basic domains, right? So one is robotic process automation. So how can you do it? Just now we understood, right? So it is a repetitive task. So repetitive task very easily can be done with the scripts, and the customer facing, I'll simply say C facing, that is customer facing problems can be managed, will be much easier and simpler. And next is how to do it. So if I want to do how to do it, it's basically a program, right? So I develop the complete code for that, right? So it could be also including your machine learning, artificial intelligence to that level, developing a model for a particular. If somebody is sitting here, they're already working on 5G RAN. So we are already talking about virtual RAN. So we ran, so in which we talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning methodologies already part of that. So now another one is, this is nothing but Ansible based. So what to do? This is nothing but declarative methodologies basically. I simply declare, right? I will say that, okay, by tomorrow, I want to say that simply your manager will say, okay, by within 48 hours, I want all our servers should be working with, say, the latest possible version of Ubuntu, for example, or Linux, or say Windows 10, whatever, because they want to say propagate a new app, for example, or maybe hundreds of apps that require, that will not work on the existing version of Ubuntu, for example. Then what do you do? Then what do you talk about, say, declarative? So what is declaration? So your CTO comes and says, okay, fine. So whole city, wherever you work, so say I have, say, 100 servers, maybe say 500 routers, whatever, and say I'm going to change it within, say, 48 hours with the latest version. So this is what we call what is being told. And internally, how it is being done, maybe with your Python code. So the idea here is It's up to you to do based on the business requirement, the process requirement. You can do a RPA is possible, or you can also do get into the model building, it's possible, or you can simply write Ansible declarative statements. I'll show a script little bit later as well. So to configure the end-to-end network. So all the things are typically possible. So we are talking about end-to-end network. We are also talking about internal model building with Python, and we are also talking about a customer facing with your RPA. So these are all the three basic or major domains of any telecom world, which you can think of automation basically. Okay, so now getting onto Ansible, there are multiple configuration management tools available, but at this point of time, Ansible is one of the most popularly used for obvious reasons. So now, what is I'm going to use for as far as the Ansible is concerned? Ansible is basically for configuration management, application deployment, and I will say upgrade. There are two things there. And also we talk about multi-vendor. Now, gentlemen, if I ask a question, so is multi-vendor is order of the day? Obviously, everybody will say answer is yes. So there is nothing called only one vendor of 5G or 2G network elements you. That is not anymore possible, right? So talk about multi-vendor capability. So we should have the multi-vendor compatibility to update a particular server or configure a particular server. So now again, I'll go back and I want to take your attention to if somebody is working on particular European domain, there is something called ITIL, which I already mentioned. So in that configuration management database is one of that fundamental principles. What ITL talks about, what ITL says what to do, it will not say how to do it, right? So that's how your Ansible will typically will help you a lot. So you have to know the configuration management has to be done, and also application deployment, also application upgrade, right? So all these things can be done with what there is something called the Ansible controller does all these things for us. So now there are two things which you can think of. Today, if you look at all your network elements, including the RAN today, so they could be a physical servers or routers, or it could be a cloud, whatever. Now, the power of Ansible is you can do anything. You can configure your the physical servers, you can configure the physical routers, you can also configure and update your the cloud functionality as well, right? So that is the power of your Ansible, right? So that's why we are getting into the Ansible at this point of time. So now, as I already gave example, suppose you have say 1,000 servers, maybe for example, say 500 routers, and your CTO comes and saying, no, I'm going to put a new app by within 48 hours. I want everything should be done. So you can't go to each and every server by server and say you first downgrade and upgrade to a particular new version of a software. That is not possible, right? It's possible, but it takes a good enough time, but we are not going to wait for that. And again, why we do automation, we took already an example to remove the manual repetitive errors, right? So that's where typically will comes into the picture. So it all can be done with your just declarative programming language, which is Ansible, which can be written in YAML language if somebody already know about it. So then you can also do virtualization. So it doesn't matter. So Ansible works with virtual infrastructure. Ansible works with the normal infrastructure, anything, whatever you want. So again, I'm repeating, it's a declarative. That is the power of the Ansible. And what Ansible can do typically, so deploy and manage application across, you see here, private and public clouds. Just now we saw, right? Anything cloud, anything could be physical, it can do, no issues on that. And we'll talk little bit later on Java pipeline, which is Ansible can do. And we'll talk a little bit later on Java pipeline, service delivery. So I develop a service and I have to deliver the service to the customer. So the service provider, so you develop an app, you have to give it to service provider, and service provider should make their particular app available to you and me like end customers, right? So that where your service delivery comes into the picture with DevOps initiatives, where your Ansible comes into the picture. And obviously your streamline OpenStack installations, and not only installations, it's upgrades also. It's easy to do the upgrades. Most of the time what you do upgrades, most of the time you do fast installations, or you do upgradations. Most of the time in doing upgradation, then totally new, you don't do install, so you typically do upgrade. And similarly, today we talk about containers, right? So simplifying orchestration, even that also can be done your the orchestration configuration with your Ansible. So fine, anyway. So we talk about Ansible is coming from a science fiction novel in way back in 1966. So they thought of a particular machine which can answer everything anywhere it is connected with. So from there, the answering machine will came into your Ansible. Of course, now it is a part of Red Hat. If you visit Red Hat website, you will come to know the complete documentation of the Ansible there. So now why Ansible basically? So this is another interesting point to understand. So far earlier, so it's a kind of journey. So we used to have a solo. That means I have a server. I have a particular a skilled person to manage it. If that particular person is leaving the company, or if the particular person is on leave, you cannot able to handle that particular server anymore. So that was the case. That was the case. Now slowly what happened is I'm going to program it and automatically reproduce it. So that is very interesting stuff. So the technical name given is infrastructure as a code or code as infrastructure. Now, what do you mean by that? Infrastructure as a code is nothing but, so today I have physical servers. Yeah, I have to configure them basically. So how can I do it? I'm not going to do manually anymore. So what I do is I write a Ansible declarative statements, ML code, so that it can take care of basically programming the not only one single server. I can program in single shot multiple servers, maybe hundreds of servers, and it's easy for testing as well. So that is the basic idea here. So that what the new nomenclature talks about, code as infrastructure. So why is a code as infrastructure? So now my code, if you write the Ansible script or the declarative statements in right way, so your configuration is being done on your the existing hardware, maybe data centers, that's fine, or you're good to go. I'm not going to depend on a single person anymore. So that is what it's an evolution. It's not happened within a day. It's evolved for over a period of time. But today where we are is basically infrastructure as a code or code as infrastructure. That's where we talk about at this point of time. So nothing but what? Runtime intelligence. There are multiple nomenclatures they have given. It could be a runtime intelligence engine, or it could be a programmable uh, uh, configuration of the existing servers. Not only servers, anything which is required in the network. It could be servers, it could be your network elements, it could be routers, it could be storage anything which is part of your network, it can be configured, right? So that's what we typically talk about. So now Ansible, as somebody asking, so everything is more or less freely available unless until you pick up very, very unique, very, very specific task. But of course, I don't have time to go through that, but you can visit this particular link. So all functions are template functions available there. And you talk about, it could be Linux, it could be Windows, it could be Cisco. You take any kind of product at this point of time. So there is already a predefined written code which you can use it. Unless until you have to tweak a little bit in very, very minute detail, that may not be there, but otherwise everything is available. But what you can contribute, because it's open source, right? You and me also can contribute. You think something is missing in the whole process, what you can do, it's very simple. You write a code, have a need, write a module, and simple open source it. So of course, most of you know GitHub, right? So if you get onto that, so you will come to know how open source is going to work, what are the things available. Very, very few minute, very specific requirement may not be available. Only that you need to program it. Otherwise, just use it and run your network. Now, I want your attention. It's very, very interesting point is this. Ansible is important. It's very interesting word what we use. So just now what I said was Ansible is basically declarative. What do you mean by that? As I told you, example, say tomorrow your CTO comes, okay, I want all the servers should be running with Ubuntu latest version, whatever it is. That's all he will say. It's a declarative statement. Then how to do it, how many servers are there, what is the IP address, right? These all will be. So what do you mean by the idempotent is this. If already some of the servers already working with the latest version, then it will not do it. So that's what the important takeaway for you all. If it is less than the latest version, then it will update. If it is already there in the latest version, it will not do anything. So that what actually it's called as overachieving the same result. What do you mean by getting the same result is, so I have different servers and some of them are already running on the same version, but some of them are running on a different version, whatever it is. But your CTO said, no, I want all servers with specific, say, for example, the latest version of, say, 2020, June 1st, for example, right? So then you have to make sure that all these servers will run to that. So you don't need to do manual anything. So that is the importance of the nature of idempotent concept is, if it is not to that level, it will do it. If it is already there, I will not do anything because I already achieved what I have to achieve. That is the meaning of saying the same result. This is very, very interesting and very important. Why it is important? Because when you run an application in your network, when you deploy a particular application, whoever deploys saying that, okay, I want this particular configuration, hardware, software, OS, database, etc. So then it is the, if that is any mismatch, your application doesn't work the way it's supposed to work, then the quality of experience is in a bad shape, which you don't want. So that is the very interesting and important feature of Ansible, that what it is called your idempotent. So you give a command. So I want, say, for example, all machines should be in Windows 10, for example. Then automatically, if it is below Windows 10, it will take it up to Windows 10. If it's already Windows 10, it will not touch. As simple as that. Okay, so that is how you should understand. You should remember. It's very interesting concept. Whenever you actually do hands-on, you will come to know very beautiful philosophy. Now I just simply put a particular declarative model, what we say. So what I will say, as I told you, I quote the same example. Your CTO says, okay, I want 100 servers with Windows 10 of 2020 June 1st, whatever example. So something like that is saying, I took a simple example. I want to add 3 users with certain privileges in 3 groups and 100 servers. That's all I will say. So, but if you look at the procedure comes from your, maybe if above version, then it will not update. So if above version, then it will not update. Okay, if I understand your question is, suppose let me take an example like this. I say 10, just an example, say 10.1 and say 9.9, for example. If I say I have to do all with the 10, for example, right? So it also will lower grade the version and I will upgrade this version, right? So that is the meaning of at same result. I hope I answered your question. That's how the Ansible is going to work, right? I think Shashwat is okay. Thank you. So now, when it comes to the procedure, so the procedure could be done internally, maybe with your Python code. So you can see here, contact servers, maybe Red Hat, Ubuntu, whatever. Add groups. We said here how many groups I want. 3 groups here. So add groups and add users. How many as users? 3 users for every group, and what are the privileges, etc. Right. So that's how you are going to work the simple, interesting philosophy over there. So now this is not end of the story. So now, can I work with cloud? Obviously, just now we said, right, it can work with cloud. So if somebody is pretty new, then we'll say a new name called playbooks. It could be something or ML code, or it could be CLI, but we don't encourage anybody to use CLI, and we encourage use the playbooks with the ML code. That is much simpler and easier, and look, feel also will be good. So now Ansible controller does what? It takes the instructions from the playbook, and first, if it is supposed to, I will say only the final stage is this, but to achieve final stage, what are the things needs to be done, that will be taken care by your ML code and your Ansible controller. That's how it works, right? So it will say deploy operating system if required, and obviously deploy virtual layer, and also your whatever the upgrades has to be done, it is going to do for us. So that is the interesting methodology or the way the Ansible is going to work for us, even in the cloud functionality as well. And very interesting thing is, Today, DevOps is the order of the day. If somebody is already working in the software industry or worked and coming to our pure telecom world, then they will say, I have to develop. So development always will be with the change and a kind of innovation by default. That's where your development comes, right? So every day you are going to come out with new thought, new idea, new requirement of the users, etc. So, but what happens is I develop an app, for example, with interesting app. So then when I come to the operations, obviously there is somebody of you will definitely accept with me that the operations, the way they work, the way the development innovation works is totally different. And I develop app, and when I give it to the operations, they say they take their own sweet time to check. Basically testing will be done, right? So that what we say, frequent incremental change with automated testing and stability. So that would take its own sweet time. So now when it comes to develop, I'm going to minimize our small modules, very, very small modules typically. Then what I do, I develop, I give it to the operations. Again, if I say yes, again, I develop and I integrate these two. So what happens is finally the customer satisfaction will be very, very happy, because the deployment always will have a different set of problems, and the development the status will always have different problems. So the development operations will be working together. That is where your develops comes into the picture. Even for this, it's easy for you to write the scripting or the your declarative statements with your Ansible. So that is the interesting part of this. Okay, so you can do update tools for consistency, source control, configuration management, etc., and automation, business process alignment. So there is business process intelligence, there is a process automation, and also business process alignment also can be done, right? The idea why we do this is basically development environment and live environment are not one and the same. So that is the reason it would take its own sweet time and long time for the testing. So what happens today is the DevOps is the new philosophy. So that's where your microservices comes into the picture typically, right? So I develop a very, very small software code, which of course obviously will have certain specific output functionality. Then I will give it to the operations, and they will say, okay, fine, this is good with this is this, whatever. The behavior of the particular code. Then based on that, it's easy for me to do the modifications and changes, again, go back to the operation. So they are not going to work independently anymore. There is no silos functionality anymore in any industry today, right? So that is the advantage of this DevOps. So now the Ansible or configuration management for the testing, Ansible also will be helping a lot into that. And again, when I started in the class today, we said, particularly in the ITIL, so we talk about microservices, and the ITIL is basically say what to do. It will never talk about how to do, right? So the what to do, ITIL, whatever it is going to talk about is very much equivalent or in line with your Ansible or declarative statement functionality. Then of course get on to the details. So we'll make it functions to happen, right? So that's how this particular philosophy would be working with it. So, but anyway, so finally, what we talked about is automation at 3 levels. Level number 1, customer facing. I'll write in a different way, customer facing, right? That's where your RPA comes into the picture, robotic process automation. Second one is, for example, model building, for example, detailed right? So there's where your machine learning and artificial intelligence comes into the picture. That is the second one. And third one is end-to-end, I'll say end-to-end configuration of the network, right? So that's where your Ansible typically comes into the picture. I mean, I'm talking about Ansible. There are multiple chef and other things are there, but if you go and do the research, so at this point of time, Ansible is much flexible and doing much better in the industry than other tools. That is the reason we talk about Ansible at this point of time. Okay, so any question and answers, any questions, anybody? So that's what basically the idea of this particular very 1 hour short webinar. The idea is to have a focus and understand the automation typically, what are the different areas you can think of, whatever the domain you work, doesn't matter. It could be customer facing, it could be I want to develop a whole model, you could do that. Or no, I have hundreds of servers every day, it's difficult to do say a manual intervention. Then you get onto your Ansible, whether it is a individual or it could be cloud based, doesn't matter. Your Ansible will help you in doing that, right? So that's how your end-to-end configuration management in line with your ITIL or any process-oriented philosophies. Typically, Ansible will be very, very useful to map onto that. Uh, so, gentlemen, so thanks in advance. So, thanks for your time. If you have any questions, I can take them. But otherwise, have a nice day. Uh, have a nice weekend coming up, and I'm hope to see you all maybe in another training or another webinar, right? So thank you very much.